Okay, yeah. So as you mentioned, there's still a few hoops to jump through there. Realistically, when might the ordinary folks at home see savings on their power bills? Well, when might this flow through for those who are struggling?
Well, the first indication of this is going to be in about another 2 or 3 months when the Australian Energy Regulator, who sets what's called the default market offers, that is the deal that is there if you absolutely want to get probably the lowest cost, the most stable deal. Now, there'll be better deals than this available from time to time, but we'll see that in the next probably March, April, May period as the numbers are crunched. And what the regulator does, Pete, is they look at all these numbers we've just been talking about, and they say, look, a prudent retailer will have to go and contract for gas in the next year or so. What's the future price looking like for them? If these prices that are coming down continue to move in that direction, then you'd see that being taken into account, which could mean some relief by middle of July this year.
Okay.
Now, there's a lot of, as you say, a lot of bridges to be followed yet, but right now things are heading in a better direction. But there's a lot to understand, and this will be a story to play out over the next couple of months.
Sure. No doubt the government will claim some credit here, Tony. How much of this is down to, away from the weather, but market intervention?
I think what market intervention did a year ago was to stabilise things. There's no doubt that the government putting a cap on price and coal prices has helped, and those caps are still in place, particularly gas now for another year. The thing that really needs to make sure that if the governments are going to follow through on other things is we've got to start to get the system really catching up with where they need to be. That is what I mean by that is that you've got to have the transmission system being built. We know there's a lot of problems with that because if you do want to have more renewables, we've also got to have for the planned and careful closure of coal-fired power stations. And that's the next thing that people are going to be concerned about, to make sure that as we do that, we don't stuff this up. So there's a big role for governments here. Right now, the immediate things have been the fact that the government's got on top of managing the system a whole lot better, I think, through the regulatory processes. There's been no fundamental policy change except for the ones I mentioned. But all those things right now are looking better.
Okay, so like you said there, I mean, this is an example of when things work well. I read the report last night. It's what I do on a Tuesday night. Tony, fewer coal supply issues, increase in cheap wind and solar supply, all contributed to this. So it's an example of when things work as they are supposed to. But what happens, if the weather turns again? Can this just be a temporary thing when the prices immediately jack back up again?
Well, two things here. One is that I'm sure you and many of your viewers would know that we were concerned and coming into this summer of El Nino. Now, so far, while there have been some pretty wild weather, we haven't seen an El Nino across the country in the way that people are talking about. They're even saying that maybe we're seeing the beginning of the end of this current El Nino cycle. Now, that makes a big difference because if we see these peak weather events, particularly usually about now in the history where we get really hot summer days 3 or 4 in a row, and if we have some problems with power stations. Now, I think that you can't absolutely predict the former, but you can be pretty confident we're not out of the woods yet on that one. Okay. So that's why, we saw a couple of weeks ago in Queensland, there was a lot of nervousness that we were getting a bit close to the edge. Yep. It turned out that we survived that okay. So we're nowhere near out of the woods yet, but I think the combination of what governments and regulatory bodies and the industry, to be fair, have been doing has meant that we're in the best position we can be to navigate those inevitable things that will happen.
Okay. Tony Wood from the Grattan Institute, thanks as always for your time.